Hey guys, welcome back to the StudyTube project. This video that you're about to see, hopefully if you want to watch the video, is one of the lessons taken from my new Skillshare class about productivity, the principles of productivity, and it's all about motivation. So this video is in its entirety is basically all of my thoughts about motivation from my own experience and from various other sources. There's going to be an affiliate link in the description below to the whole Skillshare class. If you fancy watching it, you can sign up for a 2-month free trial. Crucially, if you sign up with that affiliate link thingamajiggy, I think we make like $7 and every penny of that will be donated to the Against Malaria Foundation, who we are supporting with this video. So if you fancy signing up to Skillshare with a free trial to watch this class or anything else, then do it and buy some malaria nets to help save some lives as well. Anyway, here is the video about motivation and why it's a myth. I hope you enjoy it. Let's now talk about the second myth of productivity, and that is the myth of motivation. And this is another mental model that I think I first stumbled across this about 5 or 6 years ago. The day I discovered this mental model, it genuinely changed the game for me in terms of how I think about productivity. And just learning about this made me, I think, significantly more productive than I would have been otherwise. And that's the idea that motivation is a myth. So what is motivation? Let's take a step back and do another diagram again. So let's say we want to, for me, it's, the thing that I struggle with is going to the gym. But for a lot of students who tend to be most of my audience, it tends to be sitting down to study for the exam. So you would start with the thought, right? So the thought would be something like, I should study. That would be the thought that, crosses it into our mind. And at some point, we would get potentially the action, which is, actually studying and sitting down and opening the books or using Anki or using the retrospective revision timetable. I've got a whole Skillshare class on this actually about how to study for exams. Link in the video description. You can check it out. It's very good if I say so myself. Anyway, we start off with the thought of I should study. And then at some point we might get to the action of actually studying. And partly the whole point of the productivity thing and watching a class like this is you want to get from the thought to the action, ideally without too much problem in between. But actually the thing that loads of us struggle with, and I did a poll on my Instagram story where I asked, what are your productivity woes? And 2,000 people replied to this poll. And at least half the answers was something to do with, I really struggle to get started. I really struggle to find the motivation to do the thing that I know I should do. We know we should study, but the actual studying, we tend not to do. So why is that? Well, there's a few different reasons for it, but the word motivation comes into here now. And the word motivation comes in between the thought and the action. So motivation would be sort of the middleman. And what is motivation? Motivation is the feeling of wanting to do something. I feel like studying. So we've got I should study, then the motivation bit is I feel like studying, and then the studying bit, then the action bit is actually doing the studying. And actually, more accurately, it's probably I feel like studying right now. We all study when we feel like it. We all watch Netflix when we feel like it. We all play sports or hang out with our friends or watch videos on YouTube when we feel like it. But that's where the motivation comes in. We think we have to feel like doing the thing before we do the thing. And so thought goes to motivation, which goes to action, is kind of the traditional procrastinator's, non-productive person's view of the motivation equation. But the whole point of this class is to make us more productive. Going back to our actual productivity equation, productivity equals useful output over time multiplied by the fun factor. But in order to actually get the output bit, we actually have to get started. And that is where the motivation equation comes in. And that's where we have a problem. Going back to our pilot, plane, and engineer analogy, it's all very well, being the pilot and setting my course that today I'm going to get 5 of my subjects of chemistry done, or today I'm going to prepare for that physiology supervision that I'm giving later this day. It's all very well setting that course as the pilot. But then as the actual plane, we all struggle to take off. We struggle to actually get the plane off the ground, actually sit down and do the work. Because we think about motivation in this way. And this is the wrong way to think about motivation. This is a myth. So motivation is a myth. Instead, in an ideal world, what would actually happen is that we would have the thought, right? I should study. And that would directly lead to the action regardless of how we are feeling. Motivation is fundamentally a feeling. And relying on our feelings as a way of setting our course in life and getting what we need to do done is a recipe for disaster, because feelings are temporary, feelings are fleeting, feelings don't last for very long, they're transient. Take all the synonyms for fleeting that you want. Feelings are temporary, they're unreliable. Our feelings change moment to moment depending on the time of day, depending on the time of month, depending on the time of year, depending on what's going on in our lives. Feelings are not a reliable way to get anything done. Instead, we should just have the thought and we should go to action. And some people might describe that thing as discipline. When you have discipline, you go directly from thought to action, regardless of how you're feeling. And if we want to be more productive, this is the secret, if there is a secret, of getting started with anything. It's recognizing that motivation is a myth. We don't need motivation. All we need is the thought and the action. And through discipline, through willpower, whatever you want to call it, from the thought, we lead to the action. Now, there's a great post on a random website called Wiz Domination. I haven't read much of the stuff on this website. I've tried, but it's not really my thing. But they've got a fantastic post called Screw Motivation, What You Need is Discipline. And this was the post that I read years and years ago. And when I first came across this, it genuinely blew my mind because it was the first time I'd seen the motivation equation sort of in this sort of context, that motivation is the thing in between thought and action. And actually, we should just use discipline to go all the way. And they say on the website, which is, I'll sort of paraphrase the quote. They say that motivation relies on the erroneous assumption that we need to feel like doing the thing that we're doing before we actually do it. They also say on the website, a 3-year-old does what it feels like doing. An adult does what an adult knows it should, or an adult does his duty or her duty. A 3-year-old does what they feel like. An adult does what they need to do. And when we're thinking about productivity and when we're thinking about getting stuff done, we want to act like the adults here. We don't want to be a slave to our 3-year-old self. I think Tim Urban, the guy behind the Wait But Why blog, has a good mental model for this. He's got a very good talk about the procrastinator's dilemma and like inside the mind of a master procrastinator. And he talks about how in our minds, we've got this 3-year-old kind of little baby that's like, wailing for attention and relying on its feelings. And I need to feel like doing this thing, otherwise I'm not going to do it. And like the main reason why we love watching stuff about improving our productivity, the objective is to quash that 3-year-old so that it's irrelevant. And actually we do what the adult inside us wants us to do, which is the thought of I should study, or for me, I should go to the gym. I personally don't really have any problems with studying because I quite enjoy it. And that ties into our whole fun thing, the fun factor. The fun factor bleeds into all aspects of the productivity equation, because if we can enjoy what we're doing, we don't need motivation for it anymore. Like, when was the last time you said, I need motivation to watch Netflix? You really don't. We need to do motivation. And in fact, like, usually we only need motivation to do the things that are short-term painful and long-term useful. Yeah. So for me, it's things like going to the gym, short-term pain, long-term useful. Stretching, short-term pain, long-term useful. Eating healthily, learning how to cook. These sorts of things where it's potentially unpleasant in the moment, but I know it's going to lead to greater rewards further down the line. And there's a few different problems with this. And understanding where these problems are allows us to target the interventions to kind of hack our motivation. So we've kind of talked about the theory of it. Let's now go into some practical tips. Essentially, there's two aspects of the equation that we can target. There is the action itself, and then there's the outcome. And usually the problem with things that require motivation is usually that the outcome is a long time in the future. We don't have a very good feedback loop. If, for example, I went to the gym one day and immediately I saw an increase in the size of my biceps, I would be going to the gym every day, right? We all would, because the feedback loop is immediate. We get that reward, we get that dopamine hit. And as the author of The Motivation Myth, which is a very good book, says, success leads to motivation, which leads to success, which leads to motivation. We start off with these little successes, and that makes us become more motivated. So if we see the success of I did a bicep curl and my bicep increased in size, I'm like, yes, I automatically look better. Then of course I'd be doing bicep curls all day, every day, because I can see the successes. But usually we need motivation for the things where the feedback loop is significantly longer. For example, like healthy eating. It's so hard to lose weight because we don't see, we deprive ourselves of that, McDonald's drive-through. This is something that I struggle with a lot. Back when McDonald's was open, prior to the lockdown, depending on when you're watching this. We would deprive ourselves of the chips and immediately we would lose weight. If the feedback loop were that tight, no one would have a problem with keeping weight down. But we do, because the feedback loop is too long. So I've rambled on long enough. Basically, there's a few different ways we can target the motivation myth. Number one is focusing on the action, and number two is focusing on the outcome. Now, let's think about the action, and I think there are two ways of dealing with this. Way number one is to make the action more pleasurable, right? So we said that we don't struggle with motivation to watch Netflix. What is it about Netflix that means we don't need motivation to watch it? Well, it's fun. We enjoy watching Netflix. Why do I not struggle with the motivation to study? Because it's fun. I enjoy studying. And so if we can make the action more fun, or more pleasurable, as I'm going to write down over here, making the action more pleasurable makes us more likely to do the thing. This is pretty standard stuff. If you enjoy doing something, then you'll just be far more likely to do it. And so for me, the ways that I hack my brain into thinking that I'm enjoying something is by genuinely making it more fun for myself. So for example, when I'm studying, I make sure I've got my Spotify Study With Me playlist in my headphones or my AirPods or in the background or whatever. And yes, the evidence does sort of say that probably studying with music is slightly suboptimal compared to studying in silence. But studying with music, and I've got, Concerning Hobbits or like the Pirates of the Caribbean theme tune or like the Interstellar soundtrack banging in my headphones, that just makes it like 4 times more fun to study. And therefore, I'm more than happy to take that slight hit of efficiency and optimization of my studying and memory and stuff because it's made it fun. It makes it more pleasurable. It means I'm more likely to do it. Equally for me, when I go to the gym, the reason that I fairly regularly go to the gym is because I've made it fun. And the way I've made it fun is by firstly turning it into a game where I track my workouts and every week I try and do better than I did the week before. It kind of turns it into a personal game with myself. I'm not competing against anyone else. I don't really care what that dude over there is benching. What I care about is getting slightly better than the week before. And as soon as I started just tracking the numbers on my gym workouts, suddenly it just gave me the motivation to go to the gym far more often because it became a game. Equally, when it comes to studying for exams, I turn studying into exams a game that I'm playing with myself. That sounds a bit weird. A game that I'm playing with myself, but that I'm sort of in friendly competition with my friends. Friendly competition in that it's just kind of interesting, kind of like playing a board game. Exams are sort of like playing a board game in that you're sort of competing against your friends, but like in like a friendly sort of way. And so I treat exams like I'm playing a game with myself. I'm trying to get the best mark I can. And it's interesting to see what Paul or Jake or Molly or Catherine or Callum got just because it's kind of fun. So all these things are making it more pleasurable. So step number 1 is if you're struggling with the motivation to do anything, and this is a problem in your life, think very hard about how you can make the action more pleasurable, make it fun for yourself. Again, using the example of studying, which is something we all struggle with. I go to different libraries and different coffee shops around Cambridge, and I give myself a budget of like 20, 30 pounds a day. Feel free to adjust that depending on how much spare cash you have, in terms of sort of the amount of money I'm allowed to burn on just buying lattes. Because, ordering a latte every 2 hours makes it more pleasurable to study. Taking an Instagram photo from above for the gram makes it more pleasurable. All these things are making studying more pleasurable. Anyway, so we've talked about more pleasurable. The other thing we can target is we can make the consequences of inaction more painful. So what does this mean? So we've all had this thought when, we've got an assignment or an essay or a piece of homework or some presentation at work. We've got that due the following day. And we know that if we don't get it done by tomorrow, we're going to have bad things are going to happen. We might fail our exams. We might have to have a meeting with our headmaster. Our boss is going to shout at us. Whatever context you're living in, we all know what it's like to have a deadline that we're working towards. And usually we get the thing done if we have a deadline. And the reason we get the thing done is because at that point, the consequences of not doing the thing outweigh the pain of actually doing the thing in the first place. So again, thinking about how we can hack the motivation equation, we need to figure out ways in which to make not doing the action more painful. So for example, one really easy way of doing this that almost no one does, but that everyone who tries says it works absolutely wonders, is by putting money on the line. We all hate losing money. There's so much psychological evidence. In fact, we don't even need psychology evidence. We all hate losing money. The pain of losing $100, £100 is far worse than the joy of gaining £100 because of the utility function, because of how our brains work. We all hate losing money. And so there are websites like beminder.com or things like that, where you can literally put money on the line. And if you don't do the thing, then that money disappears. Either it gets donated to charity or it gets donated to the Ku Klux Klan. There's all sorts of different things that we can give our money to that we really don't want our money to go towards. Charity, fair enough. But yeah, putting money on the line is a really easy way of doing it. If I really cared about going to the gym, what I could do and what would absolutely work wonders is I could say to my housemate, Molly, Molly, here is £5,000. Here's a check for £5,000. If there is a single day this week for the next year that I don't go to the gym, unless I have a very, very good reason, you can cash that check and do whatever you want with the money. All of a sudden, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm making the consequences of inaction very, very painful. I know that if there is a single day where I don't go to the gym without a very, very good reason, Molly's going to cash that check and I'm going to lose £5,000. That's a lot of money for me. That's a lot of money for anyone. And so that would be a very easy way to hack the motivation equation. And so you watching this, if you're really struggling with motivation, if you are really saying to yourself and to others that, I don't have the motivation to study, why not put money on the line? And this is an interesting question because if we think about this, think about it right now. Would you really put, half of your life savings on the line in return for making sure you do the thing? Probably not. And it probably feels like quite an uncomfortable thing to do. Like even thinking about writing Molly a check for £5,000 makes me feel very uncomfortable, even though I know it would make me get the work done. And the reason it's making me feel uncomfortable is probably because I actually don't want to go to the gym that much. I might tell myself, oh, I should go to the gym, blah, 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 blah. But actually, fundamentally, I don't want to. It doesn't actually align with my goals for life to tell Molly that, unless I go to the gym every single day, you can keep the £5,000. So there's different ways of doing this. There's different websites. I'll put some links in the product and resources section, but this is a very easy way to hack our brains into being motivated to do stuff by making the consequences of inaction more painful. Okay, 2 more things. There are 2 things that we can affect with the outcome. So firstly, we can shorten the feedback loop. So that's that example that I took of going to the gym. If suddenly we became much more hench, then the feedback loop would be very short and we would enjoy going to the gym. We as humans, we love short feedback loops. Like that's why playing sports is very pleasurable, because as soon as you've done the action, you see the feedback, you see what's going on, you see the squash ball bouncing off a wall and you think, oh, that was a good shot or that was a bad shot, and you adjust it. We love learning. That's how our brains are wired. And so anything we can do to shorten feedback loops is going to make us more motivated to do the thing. So like I said, the way that I do this, practically speaking, is that everything that I need to do that I don't want to do, I turn it into a game. So for example, with the gym, the feedback loop is no longer how big are my biceps getting. The feedback loop is, have I lifted more weight than I did last week? And that's a short feedback loop. I really try and, bench, what am I benching these days? Like 70 kilograms or something. I really try and bench that 70 kilograms. And the following week, if I can get 72.5 kilograms, that will be a dopamine hit. I'll release some endorphins. I'll feel good about myself. It's a short feedback loop, and therefore I'm more likely to do it. And so whatever you're struggling with motivation-wise, think hard about how do you shorten the feedback loop. The problem with studying for exams, right, is that let's say we're 15 and doing O-levels or GCSEs or whatever, and you're thinking, okay, well, I need to do this work because I need to get good grades in my GCSEs because then ultimately that'll help me get into a better university, which I guess sort of will help me get better life outcomes, will make me happier in the long run. Those assumptions break down at various intervals. But the point is, it's a very long feedback loop, especially if we're really young in secondary school. It's really hard as an 11-year-old in the 7th grade in year 7 in the UK to really get motivated to do your homework, because the thing you're optimizing for is 5 years into the future. Ultimately, it's all about your O-level results, right? That feedback loop is way too long. So if you can turn it into a game, make it more fun, make it more interesting in some way that shortens the feedback loop, that hacks this motivation equation. And finally, another thing that hacks it is making the outcome more salient. So what do I mean by that? So salience is just sort of making the outcome more clear in our minds. And that's partly why I think students enjoy watching study with me videos or enjoy watching, YouTubers who are at the universities that they want to go to. When I used to make vlogs about life as a Cambridge University medical student, loads of people who wanted to be in that position would watch those videos and feel motivated, feel inspired. And I think the reason for that is that it's increasing the salience of the outcome. If I was a 15-year-old wanting to study medicine at Cambridge and I saw an 18-year-old YouTuber talking about what it's like studying medicine at Cambridge, it would make the outcome much more clear in my mind. And so I could use that as motivation, coming back to motivation, I could use that as motivation to help me do my homework, because I'd know what it's like. I'd see the life of a Cambridge medical student and think, this is what I want. Equally for me, I don't struggle with this sort of thing anymore because, I don't really, there isn't really a lifestyle that I aspire to as such. But for me, the thing that I struggle with is eating healthily and going to the gym. And so watching a YouTuber like Alex Costa, who looks great, is men's fashion advice is amazing, his hair is really nice, he's really toned, he's a good looking guy. Watching Alex Costa motivates me to work out more because I see what a six-pack looks like and think, damn, it would be nice to have that six-pack. And therefore increases the salience of the outcome. It makes me more likely to go to the gym. Now, all of these tactics are all based around trying to hack motivation. But as I said, the ideal scenario is that we don't need the motivation in the first place. We scrub the word motivation from our vocabulary and we just rely on discipline. We have the thought and we do the action. In an ideal world, I would not need motivation. I wouldn't need to watch Alex Costa videos or follow Gymshark Instagram accounts. I wouldn't need that to go to the gym in an ideal world. But hey, I'm only human. We're not perfect. I'm trying to get better at this, and it's a muscle that we can all get better at. Really trying to scrub the word motivation from our vocabulary and instead relying on discipline to just get us through. We have the thought, we do the action. It's kind of like going to work. I don't need the motivation to go to work. Sometimes, I'll be honest with you, even though I'm a doctor, I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh, I really can't be bothered to go to work today. But do I require myself to feel like going to work before going to work? Absolutely not. I'm a professional, I do the job, I get up, I go to work, whether or not I feel like it. And I think for me, if I can treat my physical health and, eating healthy and going to the gym and taking care of my posture, if I can treat those things with the same level of professionalism that I bring to going to work or writing my weekly email newsletter, then my life would become 10 times better, and that would compound so much over the long term. We all need to treat our own interests with as much professionalism as we treat the interests of other people. So yeah, that was why motivation is a myth. There's a very good book called The Motivation Myth. I'm blanking on who the author is, but we'll put a link over here in the video's description kind of section, wherever it is. You should definitely read that, and I'll link the Wiz Domination article about motivation and a few other thoughts on motivation, because this is genuinely something we all struggle with. And I've been going on for how long has it been? I've been going on for 20 minutes now about motivation, but I think it's just so important that we really get the idea of motivation clear in our heads, and we can hack it by doing these things, but ultimately recognize that the gold standard is that we should not need motivation at all, because ultimately motivation is a myth. So that was it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, so you know the drill by this point. Number 3 is, what's a goal that I want to achieve? How can I make the process more pleasurable? Can I increase my odds of hitting the goal by putting money on the line? And how can I make the outcomes more tangible and desirable? And this sounds like a lot of questions, but quite a lot of these can have just 1 or 2 line answers. It's very quick to do, but I think taking the time to do this will just encourage us to think more in this way in everything that we do, and therefore help us be more happier, healthier, and productive, which is like my spiel. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.